Should have dropped the garage door center.
Oh, well.
So you want to check yours and see if it's coming up.
Yes.
You got one viewer on YouTube.
Where's my Ides?
I'm going to start here in just a few minutes.
I don't see it going live on Periscope.
Let me see if it's. I'm going to your Twitter.
Okay, I just tweeted it. So wait just a minute.
No, I'm just saying if you're. It should show up.
I don't see it. It's not. Because it would have been down on here. I don't know if you know who. Is it Beauchamp?
I think it's Beauchamp
Beauchamp.
or Pasteur. Everybody's heard of Pasteur.
You should definitely read about them.
And this is a good start. This book is from the 1920s. Ethel Hume wrote this and did a lot of work on this and into, I think she did some research during World War I, and she did a lot of digging into this. And, you know, we talked about Eureka, Edgar Allan Poe, the deplatforming of him. You know, people that espouse views that go against the grain, against the world's narrative, get
Smeared.
Shunned, smeared,
Smear campaigns.
hidden. Because I'd never heard of Beauchamp until in the last year or two.
Right.
So
Pasteur is the one you all know about.
Pasteur is the one everyone.
But let me just go ahead and introduce this. I'm Yvonne Burton. This is my brother Louis Everett, and we've been doing the Ides of whatever month for since 2000.
A little over 3 years.
17, 18?
17.
17, and
We started with March because it was always
the Ides of March.
Shakespeare ruined. This is all part of history being ruined by folks in the past. As Shakespeare ruined the Ides because he said, "Beware the Ides," and talking about Caesar's assassination, and the Ides.
When we looked at it, the Ides was not something ominous.
The Ides were positive.
It was celebratory. It was celebrating the beginning of the new year. The reaping of the harvest. It
was like the planting. You were planting for
planting of the harvest
for the summer, and it was also a lot of times forgiveness of debts.
Yeah,
a lot of that happened in that time. So
boy, do we need that.
A lot of folks out there that you can listen to would probably tell you that with our calendars being messed up by the Catholic Church and a bunch of other entities in history, is our new year probably should begin with the spring and the planting, and that kind of makes sense to me. Because it's new life.
And we haven't been able to, the Ides are usually on the 13th, or there's only 4 months in which the Ides are the 15th. They're usually the 13th. And since Lou has taken on a new profession, he's driving a truck, we're not always able to do it on the Ides.
And we missed a couple of months this year. But
yeah, we missed last month. Sorry about that. But we have a good one for you tonight. And it's about words.
And look, in the title of this broadcast is Sticks and Stones, and it's ... And everybody knows the saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." And we believe that is another inversion that happens in this world. We talked about it in previous episode about devil is in the details. No, God is in the details.
If you look at the original meaning of that phrase,
and we were surprised to find that
God is in the details.
And so everything's inverted.
Everything's inverted. And we've done other scopes like nostalgia.
Nostalgia, what that means. And there's good and bad nostalgia. Nostalgia can be a strong base for you, or with good memories that you actually have.
Right.
We talked about in that episode that people have nostalgia for a time that actually didn't exist because you've been programmed through media and stuff of thinking that the 50s were this, the 60s were this, and we had good times, or there was a time when national media in the U.S. was honest,
actually reported the truth. We all want to go back to normal, when actually going back to normal would just be going back to taking the blue pill, and you just didn't know you didn't know what you didn't know back then. And so everything that you think you know is wrong.
We were going to talk about fear. Fear is a word, and that's really prevalent today. People are fearful of so-called virus, or fearful of.
Let me backtrack, because I want to. The title of it was the Sticks and Stones and the Power of Words. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how words mean things, and our enemy. And I almost said the left, because
we've been in that trap of left, right.
Programmed to believe that, Republican good, Democrat bad, and that's not true. They divide us in order to control us, and they control us through the language of words. And so they know that words cast spells, and we want to teach you guys how to.
Well, and that goes back to, because Owen Benjamin's introduced to this about wizardry and spells, spelling words.
Yeah,
there's a spell in there.
Casting spells. You cast your votes.
The sticks and stones thing. I found this somewhere, I can't remember, but a more accurate version of the poem: with the impact of words that hurt, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can also hurt me. I think the words are actually more dangerous, because the words probably bring about the sticks and stones.
I know that if you think about
stones and sticks break only skin, while words are ghosts that haunt me. Right. They stay there.
If you think, that's why, like, when you're in a relationship with someone that you love, when you fight, it's very important that you don't cross the line and say something that you regret, because those words last you might get over, even if you were hurt physically, which, that's a whole different story. You heal from the physical wounds, but the mental wounds caused by words are much more powerful. And the Bible speaks about the power of the tongue, how God will give you for good or for evil what you speak, what you ask for. And our enemy, Satan, he knows this. This is why this is why they are lying, and they keep repeating the lie. They repeat it.
And you'll find throughout this broadcast tonight that we find words that get used in the wrong. Words are important, and it's also the context and the way, your intent behind the word you're using.
Right.
And so even the supposedly worst word that you could think of, it's your intent is what the power of that word does, whether it's negative or positive.
Well, that scientific experiment with water that they did, where they wrote on the bowl, like, love, and they put it to a vibration, and if the water would do different things when different things were written. So there's the power of the spoken word, and there's the power of the written word.
Right.
And it all matters.
And it comes together, and it goes back to creation. God spoke everything into existence, and that's spoken word is a vibration as well. And so we could get lost in just one small category and go down. This could be a freaking 15-hour scope. And
we're going to try to keep it, to a tolerable level. But it's interesting when you anytime you read a story where you see a word, if you'll just start looking at the etymology, go back to the Latin.
And it seems like a lot of, in many languages, not just the English language, everything goes back to Latin.
Right.
A lot of it.
A dead language. Imagine that. How convenient. How did this language that's involved in languages all over the world, Spanish, French, Portuguese,
in which those are considered the Romance
languages. Not so much English.
Right. It's somewhat Romanian too.
Yeah.
In a way, Romance languages.
Yeah.
And you brought up English.
Well, I don't want to say not so much. English uses Latin words,
but English is the language. Like, a lot of the transgender stuff that flows out now is not as susceptible, not as taken in with these other languages, because they have feminine,
the feminine and the masculine, and all we have is the, and the can mean many different 76 genders.
Yeah.
It's prone to subversion, as someone
But Yvonne has some stuff on words, and I'm going to come back with a couple of other ones. And right before we went live, we talked about fear. And you know how fear in the Bible is said over, God and Jesus
times
says over and over, fear not, do not fear, do not fear. And we looked up fear, and this is a quick dive in, but Middle English, calamity, sudden danger, peril, sudden attack. And it says from Proto-Germanic, Old Norse for harm, distress, deception. You get down further, a lengthened form of the verbal root per, to try, to risk. But then you get state of being afraid, uneasiness caused by possible danger, developed
by the late 12th century.
Yeah. Some Old English words for fears we now use it were, I can't pronounce these, fearto. But then you get meaning of feeling of dread and reverence for God.
Reverence for God.
To put the fear of God in someone, intimidate, cause to cower.
To put the fear of God, they changed.
They inverted it. They inverted the word fear. We're not, fear is actually a sin. We're not supposed to fear.
It's
God
a reverence
says over and
for
over.
God. That's
They had to add the intimidation part.
because Satan is not original. He doesn't have anything original. He has to piggyback off of, hijack all of our thing. That's why they hijacked the rainbow. And that's what they do. That's what the enemy does. And with words, because God tells us words are more powerful than swords, the enemy doesn't fight against, you got a populist movement, this mass movement that's going one way. It doesn't fight against them or conquer them. It subverts them.
Takes the word, subverts them, the meaning and everything.
And we're being subverted
and we're
by
in
our
this window.
language.
Yeah.
So if they subvert us with their language, why can't we counter them with ours?
And just point out the true meaning of some of these words and where they came. Because we've talked before a few times about the word apocalypse. And apocalypse is not
the end of the
mushroom
world,
clouds and you're
doom
gonna,
and gloom.
You're going to be foraging outside, like the movie The Road.
Yeah. That and Book of Eli.
Yeah. It's not going to be a dark with the filter over your eyes to show the world in a certain light. It's still going to be bright outside in the daytime, especially during the summer, but it's just going to be a gradual. We talked about supposedly Rome falling and the barbarians at the gates.
All right.
A life for a lot of the people out living their lives and growing crops, it didn't change. The only thing that changed is who they sent their taxes to.
Right. That's the only thing that changed.
But it did change for the people in the cities who were involved in a bunch of horrible acts.
And a lot of those people that were leading that dispersed throughout the world, and a lot of
and just kept going.
A lot of those people are now in positions of power all over the world. It's everything is old is new again. But one of the more interesting etymologies was Satan.
Yeah, this is good.
Satan, if you go back to the Latin, I didn't write down what the Latin word was, but it means the accuser. The Hebrew, when they talked about it, it was the accuser. And is that not like the theme of the day? January 6th, how they're painting people that showed up just because they wanted their vote to count. Satan, if Satan means the accuser, look at how the left is that's Satan. Even if they don't even know they're
we have to be careful about left, right, because it's on both sides.
It's both sides.
And we a lot of us, and I've done it. I mean, I'm still doing it sometimes, and we catch ourselves. We're sitting in judgment of other people, and that's one thing we're not supposed to do. That's one of the things we're not supposed to do.
Well, when they divide us, division, diversity. Diversity is all about division. That's so funny. Diversity is our, what is it? Diversity is our
strength.
Is our strength. It's so funny because diversity it's the end of us, because divided we fall. That's another word. I didn't even look it up, but diversity means your differences.
Yeah.
And so you have all throughout history, you've had tribes or, white people, black people, Asian people, whatever. You have tribes of people that congregate together because it's just natural. You like, just like the redbirds congregate.
You have certain likes, and you start to have a culture together, and you have certain preferences, and you gather together, and this is what we want to do.
So they come up with diversity is our strength, and it's the very thing that's going to end us. And
by inversion, they do this, but what they're doing is they're wanting to homogenize everything and make everything the same, because in reality, and we're going to get into the word racism towards the end, because I have a few things to show on that, and the history of the word racism is that where was I going? I lost my train of
His
thought.
the history of the
When
word.
in the corporate world and diversity inclusion classes, you had what is happening?
It was
When I first-
throttling for a minute.
Okay, so they make these words that sound good, but they're using them for evil, or Satan ultimately is the one using it for evil, and people a lot of times I believe unwittingly are participating. Is that they don't want you to have independent thought. They don't want the.
It looks good on there. I don't know why.
I think it's back up. It went out for.
No, I just mean I don't know why the it doesn't look so clear, but whatever. I don't care. But yeah, it's back again. But
Okay, we're back again.
it keeps doing it. It's already going slow again. I don't know.
I wonder if it's my Wi-Fi.
I don't know. We'll just keep going. Like,
No, yeah. Well, I mean, it'll record. It'll still be up
yeah.
on YouTube.
Sorry.
Well, we started getting into some good gravy stuff and slowed us
Satan.
down. Well, maybe he should be gone.
Right.
He's not welcome here.
Okay, so another word I looked up was language. And when you look up
This is another good one.
language, the word tongue comes up. Language is the aggregate of words and their method of their combination into sentences used in a community for communication and to record for carrying on the processes of thought. And that got me to thinking, our language is the MS-DOS of, it's a computer program for your brain. And that's how they control us. And
Sometimes you may even feel this as you're limited expressing what you're thinking. And maybe sometimes it's our language, or maybe it's our grasp of our own language that limits us in expressing what's going on in our minds and our hearts.
right.
And so different languages might suppress, other languages might help it a little bit.
Right.
But overall, we've got to take a step back and look at what that language is doing for us and
Right.
what these words mean.
And language, it's the tongue. It's the power of the tongue. So you need to be careful about how you speak about things, how you label people, how you talk between, even the language you have in your head towards yourself, or the self-talk. Our thoughts create our reality.
Well, and it create,
So,
like if you're in your own self and saying, "Man, I'm so stupid." Well, that's gonna manifest.
that's
in
what
your body.
children that are told, "Oh, you're so
Right.
stupid," they grow up thinking they're stupid.
And then they say it to themselves.
Right. So you need to be careful with how you use your language,
And
your words.
we can't say it. We can't emphasize enough the power of the word is Jesus. How does it go in the Bible? Jesus was the Word.
Oh, and the Word was God.
Was God. And everything in Genesis, when you start out in the first chapter, God said.
It's about words,
and
the spoken word.
It was good because everything He said was good, and it
Right.
created those vibrations of however the way we can't fathom how that happened when it did, but those vibrations
because
created
everything that exists has a vibration, a frequency. Everything, light.
We have it. We have electromagnetic fields, auras coming out from our heart.
So you might think and casually, cast off the idea that your words can make such a difference, but our enemy knows how powerful they are. That's why they manipulate our words. They invert our words. They know how
or
powerful.
Our symbols or our phrases.
Or they repeat them.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. That's why a lie sticks. So why can't the truth stick then if you repeat it enough? So speaking of word, I looked up word, and I came across this guy that had written a poem. If you start looking up the etymology of words, they'll tell you the etymology, and then they might include some excerpts from written things from recent history or ancient history.
Old newspapers and stuff.
Right. This was from the 1900s, but this guy from a poem that was called Paterson, he said, "It is dangerous to leave written that which is badly written. A chance word upon paper may destroy the world. Watch carefully and erase. While the power is still yours, I say to myself, for all that is put down, once it escapes, may rot its way into 1,000 minds. The corn become a black smut, and all libraries of necessity be burned to the ground as a consequence." Now, when he says, watch carefully and erase.
You brought up the Dreyfus affair.
The Dreyfus, we did a scope on the Dreyfus affair.
He was a Jewish officer in the French army, accused of treason. It was in the aftermath of the Franco-Prussian War, and France had suffered a humiliating defeat to the Germans, because at the time the French were considered the epitome of war, and I mean they just had it all going. And Germany kicked their butt, and soon it was Prussia, and then they soon became Germany afterwards. Bismarck's involved in all that.
Right.
But Dreyfus was a Jewish officer in the French army, accused of treason, and it all started with
a letter that was
thrown in the garbage, but it wasn't destroyed. Somebody picked it up and used, and they wove this tapestry of this story, this narrative of how bad this guy was.
Right. He ended up in jail for 10 years, 8 to 10 years. So the written word, it's powerful. So he says, watch carefully and erase while the power is still yours. So we have different modes of writing now. We have tweeting. So when you're tweeting, don't just mindlessly, you have this thought that comes to you.
Hey, we're guilty.
You know how you'll write an email. You're in the heat of the moment. You write an email and then you'll sleep on it. So it's kind of that same idea. Think on it.
Instead of throwing in the wastebasket, it's like don't hit send until you maybe sleep on it and think about it before you send that email.
Right, because all words, all manifestations of words, whether it's written or spoken or thought in your head. That's another thing. You'll get the negative thoughts that seem to come over you almost like magically, spiritually, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And if they're bad, you can rebuke those. You can cast them out. If you're paying attention and you're aware, your conscience, you can control those. There's power in your words, no matter how those words manifest themselves. And so that's just something to keep in mind going forward. Use them carefully.
And at the same time, as you're intaking information, think about what those words, and start looking them up. Because when we start looking these things up, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So when there's certain things you see over and over again, start looking at the origin of the word, what it means, and why is it being used the way it is.
Right. Especially if it's a new word that, how with George Bush it was gravitas.
Yeah.
I can't think of a more recent example. Or corona, corona. There's a good one.
Well, and even variant.
Yeah, variant.
And we pulled that up too.
No, it wasn't really that interesting.
That's the one.
The coronavirus, why they call it the coronavirus? Corona means crown.
Mm-hmm. And it's also a typewriter.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we still got some other words to get to.
So how about conspiracy theory? An explanation of an event or situation involving unwarranted belief that is caused by a conspiracy among powerful forces, and it emerged in mid-20th century. By 1937, and figures in the writings of or about Charles Beard, Hofstadter, I've not heard of these people, but the degree of paranoia and unreasonableness implied in each use is not always easy to discern. Especially the theory that a certain conspiracy exists, especially in court cases. It's used in general reference to theories of hidden cabals, pulling wires behind the scenes of national or global events is by 1871, how that was being used. This was written in 1893. We shall better understand the ensuing Civil War if we study the movements in the four most important of these states in relation to a theory which asserts that the secession was a conspiracy of whose central cabal, composed of Southern senators and representatives in Washington, dictated through its ramifications in the states the inception and the course of the revolution. That was from the Conspiracy Theory and History of the United States from the Compromise of 1850. Now, it's the same thing, like what we're going through today. If you look at the movements in the four most important of these states in relation to a theory, a cabal composed of Southern senators and representatives in Washington. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, over and over again. And you take conspiracy theory, and there's been the Q phenomena during the Trump years, and there's the Q-tards, and there's the people that believe in Q and all this stuff. And I'm like, conspiracy theory, when you boil it down, because it's made by Jim Bob and I believe Owen Benjamin both succinctly pull it up. It's if a man is cheating on his wife, him and the other woman are in a conspiracy. And if the wife thinks the man is cheating because she's seeing signs, she's a conspiracy theorist. Right. So that's at the most basic. And then, you get into conspiracy theory, got into the mainstream media because the CIA said there's a bunch of people that don't believe
the magic bullet theory,
the narrative of the JFK assassination.
Right.
And because these people don't believe that, they're conspiracy theorists, and now that's a bad term. And you can go into rabbit holes about child trafficking, which that stuff does happen. You can get into you can get stuck and not, you can let your family go by the wayside while you're investigating. Oh my God, Hillary Clinton and all these people doing all this stuff. It's not beyond the pale to think that world leaders today do some evil crap, because you go back in, King James, who initiated the King James Bible,
right,
burned women
at the stake
that did not accept Christianity. Okay. Right. I don't think that's what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about spread the word and bring people to him. I don't think he meant to, if you didn't say right away, you get to be burned alive.
Right.
So don't think that just because it happened in the 1600s, that it wouldn't happen in the 21st century.
Right.
So that's not beyond the pale, but regardless of that, we still got work to do in our own lives, and that's what it's always been throughout history.
And you can't control like what's going on at the globalist, the elite, the so-called elites. You can't control that. You can't do anything about it, but you can be a loving father, a good wife, a good mother. You can provide a safe haven for your children. And look out for your community.
Just be a beacon in your own neighborhood.
It seems like everything about our society etymology, but they included an excerpt from something that was written by Ezra Pound from the ABC of Economics in 1933. Democracy implies that the man must take the responsibility for choosing his rulers and representatives, and for the maintenance of his, and for the probable encroachments of the government, which he has sanctioned to act for him in public matters. Doesn't that sound like a republic?
Yeah.
So that's another way that they can subvert words. That's not what a democracy, that's not the meaning of democracy.
Well, and democracy is majority rule too. And
right.
There's a lot.
Because what he describes here sounds like a republic.
Yeah.
And then I looked up actually the word war And I didn't find anything interesting about the etymology of it, but when it came to what they, excerpt that they included about it was from Vera Brittain, the Testament of Youth. The causes of war are always represented. Its honor is dishonest and its glory meretricious, but the challenge to spiritual endurance, the intense sharpening of all of the senses, the vitalizing consciousness of common peril for a common end, remain to allure those boys and girls who have just reached the age when love and friendship and the adventure call more persistently than in any later time. The glamour may be the mere delirium of fever, which as soon as war is over, dies out and shows itself for the will-o-wisp that it is. But while it lasts, no emotion known to man seems as yet to have quite the compelling power of this enlarged vitality.
And then this is a great quote from John Foster Dulles, which we, Yvonne, both think is probably an evil man.
Yeah.
But this quote is true.
The world will never have lasting peace so long as men reserve for the war the finest human qualities.
And it's in the first part of the paragraph. The causes of war are always falsely represented. Its honor is dishonest and its glory meretricious. And so what I got out of that was that there are men in wartime when they might be clouded and judged because they're patriotic fever and stuff, is they present valor. They hit the finest human qualities. They lay down their lives for their fellow, the guys in their squad. The guy falling on the grenade for his men in the squad. What could have happened if they weren't in that war, but they were in?
What they could have done for their families, their communities. Think about like World War II, the propaganda used in World War I and World War II.
Yeah, we covered that in one of a previous stream.
World War I, what's his name that got elected? What's his name? He kept us out of war.
Oh, Wilson.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson. He kept us out of war, and then the next month, that changes, and they sink the Lusitania, and they play on the emotions of the American people and the young men.
And the war is the diversion from what should have been happening in the first place.
The war and things like it's a distraction. It keeps you from looking at yourself, bettering yourself.
Like this paragraph just said, there are great qualities, but they are co-opted. They are inverted.
Right.
Just like everything else, words are inverted. And so honor and bravery they were honorable in their minds and brave, but they were being used for bad purposes.
You hear when we talk about our veterans, and God bless them, the military, they think they're doing the right thing, that they're fighting for our freedom. How does sending our men to fight and die in Afghanistan fight for our freedom here? Well, they tell us, we got to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them over here. Meanwhile, millions have come across the southern border.
Yeah. And it's just, I think a lot of the hard times that veterans get when they, most especially the combat veterans, when they come back, I believe a lot of these guys have seen what actually was happening, and they come back, and I can't say for sure, but I get the sense that some of these guys probably don't like you going, thank you for your service, because they're like,
because they don't feel worthy. But to picture, you take these people that grow up, in our modern world, this safe space actually over here in America, and then you train them to kill. You send them over there to kill foreigners. The warmongers like it. Bill Crystal and Max Boot and all these people. Ben Shapiro. Don't even get me started on that.
Don't be anti-Semitic.
Oh, I know. I can't say anything.
We've got that word in. We've got Semitic in here too.
Semitic.
I have some stuff here.
I've only got one more. Oh, another thing about war. The Latin, I didn't write down. It was like bears or some, means to bring into confusion. So think about that in context of all the different wars. War on poverty, war on drugs,
confusion.
War on, sex trafficking. It doesn't seem like any of when we start a war on something that we ever win it.
It gets worse.
It gets worse.
I would liken it to my kids today in school there's posters everywhere, and there's a huge push. It's been for, I don't know, 10 years or so, anti-bullying campaigns.
Right.
And bullying is even worse because kids, I don't remember hearing about kids killing themselves because of bullying in the 80s and 90s.
No.
And actually there's a lot of, even the racial strife we didn't see in the 80s and 90s that we do now. So it
actually, I kind of have this theory that things were getting better. And then they're like, okay,
oh, no, we got
to stir this up, because in order for them to keep doing what they're doing, they have to have us slaves fighting each other. Always.
And that's what war ultimately does. It makes sharp lines of division.
Right.
Oh, you've got a gray uniform. I got a blue uniform. Right. We got to hate each other.
Red, blue.
Yeah. Red and blue revolution, blue and gray civil war.
Even look at
and then there was different shades of gray. There was khaki.
Shades of gray.
There was khaki and that's
50
a different.
Shades
that's
of
a
gray.
that's a. This is even a more insidious shades of gray.
Yeah.
But there was khaki on one side, and there was gray on the German side. And
well, think about I have a negative reaction to the Chinese flag with it's the hammer and sickle, or is that
that's the Soviet Union.
So you think about our flags, which has nothing to do with this, and I'll just make this short. But if you research our flag,
we covered that a few months ago.
We did.
George Washington fought under a British East India Company flag, basically.
East India, and that flag that was basically the very first global corporation. So our American flag looks very much like this, the
British East India Company.
And then you've got the hammer and the sickle, which that's a farming. That's I'm not reading anything into it. I just find it interesting, and maybe we're being misled. I don't know. But the only other word that I was going to go over was drugs. When I researched drugs, pharmaceuticals came up, and the Greek pharmakeutikos, which means preparer of drugs or poisoner. And I don't think it needs any explanation. But
words have meaning, and especially the intent you have behind them.
And they very meticulously pick these words for a reason. They their signs, their symbols, their number, they're very intentional. And so we need to be intentional.
And on the drugs thing, I'll add real quick. I just thought of this, is that you think of the pharmaceutical companies and all the drugs that are out there that are FDA approved.
Yeah.
And there's tons of them. And you see the commercials about all the side effects, and the side effects seem like to be worse than what would, if you did get better. They're worse than the disease you already have, the so-called disease you already have. But in the meantime, there's a bunch of guys in prison for selling marijuana.
Right.
Or even cocaine.
But even LSD.
But
you'll even see years later, or you or a family member took this drug. Did you experience such and such? So, which is not going to happen with the vaccines because they have immunity. I'm guessing there's a loophole there that somebody could get them on, but I don't know.
But maybe the guys getting arrested for selling drugs are competitors that are just being eliminated.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why we're in Afghanistan guarding the poppy fields.
Well, we're pulling out now.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Supposedly.
But we've got anti-Semitic, or actually Semitic. But when you're called an anti-Semite, everybody thinks of Holocaust.
Yeah.
And Jewish people. And definition of a Semite, a member of any number of peoples of ancient southwestern Asia, including the Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Arabs. A lot of this is around, Israel, Turkey, Egypt, Iraq, Syria. A member of a modern people speaking a Semitic language. The first known use of Semite supposedly is 1598 in the meaning of 1A, mean a member of one of these peoples.
Right. So
there's Phoenicians. Phoenicians are before the Hebrews and Arabs.
Right.
And Akkadians you could liken that to the Babylonians. Mm-hmm. And so Semitic refers to the peoples, languages, cultures of the descendants of Noah's son Shem, who are known as Semites. And now you think, okay, that's just Jewish. But when you coming from Shem, early Semites included various Arabian tribes as well as the Aramaeans or Syrians, the Assyrians, the early Chaldeans, the Elamites, the Hebrews, and others. They inhabited much of the southwest corner of Asia, again, the same area, including most of the Fertile Crescent. Fertile Crescent is the Tigris and Euphrates rivers,
Right.
and that's where a lot of people think Eden was.
Right.
In Bible times, Semitic languages include Akkadian, spoken in Assyria and Babylon, Arabic, Aramaic, Hebrew, and the languages of the neighboring nations of Israel, such as the Ammonites and the Moabites. No other language family has a longer recorded history.
Wow.
When a word, name, or idiom is termed Semitic, it means that its origin is from a Semitic language or that has characteristics that can be found in Semitic language.
Interesting.
Oh, that's another one. We got vaccine on the agenda too.
Yeah. So anti-Semite, everybody, what they have in their heads is what an anti-Semite. They've even
inverted that.
Right.
They've changed it. They're using it.
See, that's what we need to understand what the enemy does. So just like on January 6th, and I was there on January 6th. I didn't go in the Capitol. But and there was a lot of people down there. There had to be a million people down there. There were so many people. So they knew these people were coming because they saw the bookings at the hotels and the flights. So they don't fight against the tide.
Mm-mm.
They surf it. So
well, and they use parts of it for their own ends.
Right.
And there's always going to be.
So they subvert it. They find a way. It's the Sun Tzu way of fighting the wars that you get your enemy to fight for you. And so they do this with words. And if they do it, we can do it.
Just stop and point out, hey, this is not what this means.
Right.
This is not what this has ever meant.
Right. Especially like if you're in conversation with someone, if you're in a tweet with somebody, which I don't advise getting in Twitter wars. They're pointless. Yeah. And you don't know whether they're bots or paid trolls. But when you see something, from mainstream media where they're subverting the language, quote tweet it, point it out, go, call it out.
This is wrong.
They can subvert it, but we can revert it.
Yeah. We just made up a new word.
Revert. Yeah. It's like strategery.
So we've got vaccine. And this gets into Pasteur, but before even Pasteur, there was a man named Edward Jenner. So the Latin word for cow is vacca. The scientific name for cowpox is Vartola vaccina because vaccina means of the cow. Edward Jenner, a British physician, coined the word vaccine in 1796, using it to describe this technique of injection. And supposedly we eliminated small. If this was such a good tool, why did it take 150 years?
I looked into that whole smallpox vaccine, and it was actually had some severe side effects. I'm under the belief that they stopped doing it because it was hurting.
Owen had somebody write to his stream on a chat or a letter that said it's not eating animals that makes us sick. It's acting like animals. And
yeah.
I don't know, injecting yourself with stuff from a cow might not be the best way to go about being healthy.
Right.
So we'll leave vaccine. I mean, we've heard enough about vaccine. We talked about the sticks and stones.
Yeah.
So I guess you want to talk about we got a big one. You could call it an elephant in the room. Racism.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going around on social media that Leon Trotsky of the Russian he ended up
Retry. Offline.
Anti-stream. And we're back.
YouTube doesn't want us talking about racism for some reason. I shouldn't have said that.
Racialism. Yep, it's back on Facebook too.
Okay. YouTube doesn't want us talking about racism for some reason. I shouldn't have said that. Okay. Turn that down. All right, we're almost finished. We're trying to wrap up, and YouTube doesn't want us to talk about this stuff. So.
We were actually getting to where you don't need to look at people the way the media is portraying all this.
Is your stuff gone? So we were talking about.
We were talking about that guy.
Yeah.
U.S. general, who we think probably coined the term racism, especially for the U.S. He was basically frustrated with Native Americans who wanted to hold on to their culture.
Right.
They were racists.
They didn't want. Okay, think about the Americans now when they see, Central America flooding the border, Africa flooding the border, and you label us as racist because we worry about our culture and our demographics being diluted. Well, the Indians, they didn't want the white man to dilute their culture.
And perhaps like today, there's not enough of us now who want to stand up for whatever culture that we had.
Right.
And maybe back at the same time back then, there weren't enough.
So,
Who knows?
So these Indians who didn't want their culture diluted, want to become
Killing me.
Okay. Anyway.
Well,
so when you hear people call you racist, they've subverted the term racist. There's nothing wrong with the culture, with the Chinese wanting to remain Chinese.
And another thing I would put with that is, the way it's being portrayed, it's not. I don't see it in my everyday life. I don't see images on TV and hateful people on both sides saying things to each other and or supposed accusations. I don't see this. I interact with people all the time, driving all over this country and going to different truck stops and stuff. And there's friendly people everywhere you go. And we got to remember, don't believe your lying eyes when it's looking at media.
Right.
But look at what's going on in your actual world, what you see, because we talked about that in nostalgia. Nostalgia is good and bad. There's bad with you have memories of things you haven't experienced yourself. We have nostalgia for our grandmother making homemade biscuits at dinner.
That was real.
And helping us, that's real. So also think about racial strife and all these other things going on.
Right.
Think about what you're actually experiencing in your life. And it goes the same for so-called corona. It goes for racism. It goes for riots. It goes because I saw a lot of destruction of riots last year, but in my travels, I haven't seen riots. I haven't seen people wanting to bang clubs over each other and shoot each other. There does exist violence in the world and in this country, but think about just as you're going through your life and going to work, you don't hurl insults at people face to face. People aren't doing that. Right. So it does happen, but
and just pay attention when you're reading these narratives in the media. Pay attention to the words that they're using and use your own discernment to try to figure out what they're doing, because you can correct them.
And pray, and I do this. I pray for, it's not just wisdom, it's discernment too. I want to be able to discern and decide what I'm seeing is real and not.
Right, because the lies are coming from all directions.
And God created everything. He also created discernment in you. You can decide. You don't have to listen to a person in a white coat tell you what's going on.
Or the experts or the scientists that are part of the cult of scientism.
Especially when all of their stories and in the media and stuff, it's studies point to. Studies suggest.
say.
Studies suggest.
Studies recommend.
Science doesn't suggest. So
No,
when
it's-
people
it's
say
precise.
believe the science, real science with experimentation and all the steps to, isolating and
Right. Was that the last one you had? Was that general?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So that wraps up what we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about the power of words. God tells us that the power of words are more powerful than sword. Even with the word sword, you take away that S, put it on the end, it's words. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Oh, yes, they will hurt you. And they do hurt you. That's why the enemy uses them so precisely and intently. You need to have that same intention when you use your words.
That's the thing, is that Satan will have a specific intent every time when a word is used.
Right.
And now sometimes we're haphazard with our intent.
Right.
And so we need to maybe be more focused about how we use words. Be more
careful. That one thing I read about, be careful about what you write and erase.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when you're writing up a tweet, don't just in the heat of the moment think of a tweet and hit send. Think about it.
Sometimes the best letter you've sent somewhere is the one you didn't send.
The one
maybe
you
it's
never
like
sent.
And I've done it. I have caught myself. Sometimes I'm typing something and I'm going, man, I'm going to really roast this person. And then I'm like, you know what?
What do you
backspace
like,
all the way and come back out. I'm not going to send this.
Right.
I have tried to check myself.
Because the power of words, God talks about in a Bible verse about the power of the tongue. It's one of my favorite verses. And I'm always constantly having to remind myself how I talk about anything, myself, my family, that God's going to give it to you.
I think, does he say guard your words?
He does say guard your words. That he will give you for good or for evil what you speak. And our enemy knows here's the important part is our enemy knows how important words are. And we need to learn how important words are. And they use them for a purpose. So figure it out.
Yeah. Correct
them. Use your words precisely. Turn it around. They invert things. And my new word is we revert. We're going to revert that inversion.
I made a new word.
So,
and so I guess we could close with, we talked about fear in the beginning, and God says, fear not. And thus we seek to put the fear of God into the natives at the point of the bayonet and excuse ourselves for the bloody work on the plea of the benefits which we intend to confer afterwards. That's a man talking.
Right. God
said, fear not. And when you fear God in the context of the Bible, it's a reverence. It's not a
like
fear the way we
this problem is so big that I can't comprehend it, and my God can take care of it.
Yeah.
So fear not, for he is with you.
So maybe lose the word fear in our lexicon. Maybe that's one we could
Revere.
Just delete.
Yeah. So
and change it.
We'll be back next month. Not sure what time. Not sure if it'll be YouTube. YouTube's not being very nice.
Well, we're not Batman, so that's a good thing too.
That's true.
Same day, same week, same time.
All right.
We're not Batman, so
right.
That's probably a good thing too.
Yeah.
So, thanks guys for listening.
If you found this interesting, please share it, because our Periscope, we used to be able to reach more people, and now that's gone, it's a different story. So
we're going to try to build this channel up and see what happens from there.
And we'll see you next month.
All right. Thanks, guys.